Okay, so the first process that we're going to go over today, it's diffusion, right? So diffusion is really the process where one I would say is really unique and distinct with ACT, because this is where we're going to try to help clients change their relationship with their thoughts, right? We're not focused on challenging thoughts or how, like I said, how true a thought is. We really want to help clients understand how they can start to notice and observe their thoughts. We can learn to watch thoughts and not be a slave to thoughts, right? Because we want to help them create that space from those thoughts. And in this approach, right, this is why we say, like, it doesn't really matter what thought you have. We're just going to try to change your relationship in this thought you have, whether it's a suicidal ideation or whether it's a negative thought about yourself or the world. Like, we just want to start to, like, oh, wow, I'm noticing that thought got me really stuck. So, okay, let's create some space from that thought and then respond differently. Diffusion is also a made-up word in ACT. Fusion would be the inverse, right? That's when a client is really kind of entangled or enmeshed with that thought, where they maybe aren't even realizing the influence that this thought is having on their behaviors. So our aim is to try to help them have more diffused thoughts. One thing to note, though, with diffusion, it's, right, we might be fused to many, many different thoughts. But again, if it's workable and it doesn't really matter, then I'm not going to sit there and focus on helping you create space from that thought, right? So like, if I have the thought, it's important to be a good parent, right? And that thought, right, I'm fused to that thought. I really believe that, but that's not like positively influences my behavior. It doesn't matter that you're fused to it because it's workable for you. Now, if I have the thought, like, I'm the best parent in the world, and I'm really fused to that thought, and I then, like, am unable maybe to take feedback or look out at times when I've dropped the ball or made mistakes as a parent, then I am going to try to help create some space from that thought to help shift behaviors, right? Because it's more in line with their life to try to be a parent that takes accountability. One way to start to do this, right? 3 different kind of tools. And generally my aim, like I said, is to give you at least 3 different type of interventions that you could practice with clients, right? So again, even like the framework at looking at thoughts versus from thoughts, and you can do this in different ways and like different questions that you can prompt them. Wow, did you just notice what your mind did there? Right. And from the onset of when I'm working with a client, like when I start to have the framework of talking about their mind, I really will constantly use a framework of like, wow, your mind just made up a story of yada, 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 or wow, my mind is making up a story. So even in that framework of having that perspective of like your mind, my mind, right? Instead of like, the thought that you're not good enough. It's like, I'm really trying to already have this framework of like, your mind is a language making machine that's constantly going and generating thoughts, right? And again, like you can even just have the inflection of like, oh, wow, that's an interesting thought that just showed up. Wow, this interesting thought that you're a crappy therapist. Oh, okay, gotcha. That's a thought there. I will often, it's not on here, but we'll use a kind of connotation of like, wow, it seems like your mind just set up a nice little trap for you, right? In saying that you're a really crappy therapist and in telling you that, hey, maybe that means that you should leave the profession, like there seems to be a trap there. Can we kind of explore kind of what's happening? And you can just like even help the client understand, like, where is your mind trying to pull you there? Or again, so just kind of different questions or frames that you can help clients understand and start to look at thoughts, not necessarily from thoughts. Another really, really easy experiential one, it's literally like I'll say to clients, like, are your thoughts here or here? Right? Because it seems like that thought that you're not a good therapist is here and it's keeping you really stuck. What can we do to just create a little bit more space so it's here, right? And it's again not it's a super quick experience, and you'd try to have the client do it with you, right? And once you kind of have already used that metaphor, you can do that throughout your work together. Oh, it looks like your thoughts are back here again. Okay, let's say what we can do to create some space to have them be over here, right? And something to keep in mind, like I said, there's a lot of experiential exercises, and we also use a lot of metaphors as well. Different types of metaphors, because metaphors is really helpful to kind of undermined a little bit the role of language, and it just helps, and clients will have their own kind of learning, and you don't at times have to like explain it so explicitly. You can use different types of metaphors to help them understand the concept. And then just kind of different ways you can frame the mind as well. Like, wow, it seems like your mind is a don't get killed machine, right? And even with this kind of like perspective of like your mind is like a don't get killed machine, I'll even kind of explain to clients like, yeah, your mind has evolved to try to really be aware of anything that could go wrong to make sure that you stay alive, right? Our mind has evolved to kind of have this negativity bias. And so it's like, don't get killed machine. It's rather be safe than sorry. Especially I'll say that often with clients who struggle with anxiety, right? But if we never had that like internal alarm, that wouldn't really be helpful for us. But like this don't get killed machine, sometimes it goes into overdrive. And we just really need to notice when that happens. And again, you can even have the framework, really another classic way to think about this. It's, hey, like your mind just had another suggestion and it was trying to protect you. Sounds like it's not helpful, but can you genuinely take a moment to thank your mind there? Like, thank you, mind, for that thought. I hear you. I see what you're trying to do. And I'm going to refocus and do something that feels intentional, right? And even this kind of tool of like thanking your mind, I'll tell clients it's not in a like sarcastic way, like, oh, thanks, mind, right? It's really in a genuine like, I see what you're trying to do. Like, thank you for the effort, right? You're just doing your job, right? It's just not working for me. Another kind of really common one, the inner bully, like what is it like to really be bullied by your mind there, right? What happens to you when you let that inner bully kind of call the shots? What is that experience like for you? Another one that I use often, the masterful salesman, but I sometimes will just even say like, seems like your mind is kind of like if you've ever gone to buy a car, right? And when you walk in, there's like this salesman that's like really kind of trying to convince you, like, and will try to pull out all the stops and will say anything and will try to kind of manipulate you and persuade you. And you feel like really pressured, right? It kind of seems like your mind is doing that now. Like your mind is kind of like that sneezy salesman. And no judgment to any salesman, right? But again, just kind of having that framework, especially when I'll use this kind of metaphor more so when a client is getting like, their mind is getting them really stuck about trying to do something and getting them like, I should do this, I need to do this, is right? Yet it's not in a line with their behaviors and so forth. So again, different ways that you can kind of start to have this framework.